I came home to find a massive garage built halfway into my property. When I confronted them, they casually shrugged. Just consider it shared space. My hands shook with rage, but I kept my cool. A month later, they watched in horror as their precious garage was torn down, brick by brick. And that was just the beginning. I never thought I'd be the type to get into a feud with a neighbor. Moving into my new home in Springfield, Illinois, I envisioned peaceful suburban life. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. It all started a few months after settling in. One morning, I noticed construction materials piling up in Mr. Randall's yard next door. Curious, I approached him. "Morning, Mr. Randall. What's all this for?" I asked. He barely looked up. "Building a garage," he said. I nodded, thinking nothing of it. A few days later, I realized the foundation was being laid alarmingly close to our shared property line. I decided to check my property survey to be sure. The next day, I approached him again. "Mr. Randall, I noticed the garage is pretty close to the property line. Are you sure it's within your boundary?" I asked. He shrugged. Had a guy look at it. Said it's fine. Something felt off. I decided to hire a professional surveyor to confirm. A week later, the results were in. The garage's foundation extended 3 feet into my property. Armed with this information, I approached Mr. Randall once more. "Mr. Randall, I had a survey done. Your garage is encroaching 3 feet into my property," I said, handing him the report. He glanced at it and handed it back. "Previous owner didn't mind." "Why should you?" "Because it's my property," I replied, trying to keep my cool. "I'm asking you to halt construction and remove the part that's on my land." He chuckled. "Not gonna happen." Frustrated, I consulted with a local attorney. She advised me to send a formal cease and desist letter, which we did. Mr. Randall ignored it and continued construction. Taking the next step, I filed a lawsuit for property encroachment. During the court proceedings, my surveyor testified and the evidence was clear. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering Mr. Randall to remove the portion of the garage on my property within 30 days. 30 days passed and nothing changed. Back to court we went. The judge found Mr. Randall in contempt and authorized me to hire a demolition crew to remove the encroaching structure at Mr. Randall's expense. The demolition day was tense. As the crew worked, Mr. Randall stood on his porch, glaring. Once the encroaching portion was removed, I thought the ordeal was over. I was wrong. Late-night construction noises, trash mysteriously appearing on my lawn, and other petty annoyances became the norm. I documented everything and reported him to local authorities. Eventually, he was fined for multiple violations. One evening, there was a knock on my door. It was Mr. Randall. "Truce?" he asked, extending a hand. I hesitated but shook it. "Truce." Since then, we've maintained a cordial, if distant, relationship. The experience taught me the importance of standing up for my rights and the value of clear communication. So after that awkward truce handshake, I honestly thought things would die down. I wasn't expecting us to become friends, but at least I figured he'd stop acting like a child. For a couple of weeks, it was quiet. Too quiet. Then one morning, I walked out to get the paper and saw spray paint on my fence. "Thief." That's all it said in big red letters across the wood slats. At first, I thought maybe it was kids. Then I checked my security camera footage. Clear as day, Randall, in a hoodie at 2:17 a.m., can of spray paint in hand, pacing like a lunatic. He even stood back to admire his work like he was proud of it. I reported it. Cops came. I gave them the footage. They issued him a warning, but said it'd be hard to press charges without catching him red-handed. I asked if the footage wasn't enough. They said it helps, but it's still up to the DA. Fine. I repainted the fence. I didn't even confront him this time. Didn't knock. Didn't say a word. But that's when things really started getting weird. Random things went missing from my yard. A rake, then my garden hose, then one of those little solar lights from my walkway. I assumed it was Randall. Who else would it be? But again, I couldn't prove it. Then came the dead animals. First, it was a squirrel, laid right on my welcome mat. Next week, it was a raccoon, dumped in my flower bed. Flies, the smell, everything, like he wanted to send a message. I checked the cameras again, but nothing this time. I had motion sensor lights too, but they didn't catch anything either. I started to wonder if he had found a blind spot. I installed more cameras. I changed the locks. I bought a German Shepherd. I wasn't scared, but I was pissed. I couldn't believe this was happening over a damn garage. A garage that he built into my property. He lost. It was over. But clearly, this guy couldn't let go. Then, one night, around 1:30 a.m., I was woken up by the dog barking like mad. I grabbed the flashlight and checked the backyard from my second-floor window. There he was, Randall, standing in my backyard in his pajamas, staring up at my house. No tools. No trash. Just standing there. Watching. I turned on every light I could from inside and yelled, "Get off my property." He didn't move. Just turned and slowly walked away. Next morning, I went straight to the police again. Filed a full report. Showed them the new footage. They finally agreed to patrol the neighborhood more often and told me to call immediately if it happened again. That weekend, I went to visit my sister in Champaign to clear my head. Stayed overnight. My teenage son stayed home with the dog. While I was gone, Randall called the city and reported a gas leak on my property. Claimed he smelled something. Fire department showed up. Utility company too. My son called me in a panic. They didn't find anything. But they dug up a 4-foot trench along the side of my house to check the main line. Tore up the grass, left holes, made a mess of everything. No one reimbursed me. I was furious. That's when I realized Randall wasn't just a jerk. He was dangerous. And more than that, he was obsessed. This wasn't about the garage anymore. This was personal now. I went back through every legal route I could. Talked to the attorney. Talked to the cops. No one could give me anything more than warnings or civil suggestions. I was told if I retaliated physically or verbally, it could come back on me. So I started thinking differently. If he was going to make it personal, I'd hit him where it hurt. I started researching everything I could about him, his property records, old code violations, permits, past legal troubles, anything. Took days of digging, but I finally found a nugget. Randall had installed a massive shed in his backyard 6 years ago without a permit. He even built a small workshop extension to his house. Also unpermitted. I called the county office anonymously. 2 weeks later, inspectors were crawling all over his property. Measuring tape, clipboards, everything. And then boom. Fines. Notices. Orders to bring the structures up to code or tear them down. The best part? They found some electrical work in his workshop that violated every safety code in the book. Randall didn't just get fined, he got reported to the state. The day they taped the red "Unsafe to Occupy" notice on his backyard workshop, I was outside watering the lawn. I didn't say a word. He looked at me. I smiled. And just like that, his little empire started to crack. But this was just the beginning. After the workshop got shut down, Randall didn't come outside much. I figured he was licking his wounds. For the first time since this mess began, things felt calm. But that calm lasted all of 8 days. On a Friday morning, I got a letter in the mail. It was from a lawyer, Randall's new attorney. Apparently, he was suing me now. For emotional distress. For property damage. For harassment. I almost laughed. But once I read through it, I realized this guy wasn't just bluffing. He had submitted photos of my dog barking at him, evidence of lights I'd installed shining into his bedroom, and even a claim that I poisoned one of his trees. I hadn't even touched the damn tree. Still, I had to respond. My attorney, bless her patience, walked me through it. She filed a response with evidence. My security footage, the vandalism reports, the animal control calls, everything. We turned his claims into a timeline of harassment. But even with that, I had to go to court. Again. The court date was set for a month later. In the meantime, things got quiet again. Suspiciously quiet. One night, my son came into my room holding a letter. No envelope. Just a folded-up sheet of paper someone had shoved under the back door. All it said was, "Move, before it gets worse." That was it. My heart dropped. I checked every camera. Nothing. Whoever did it had found another blind spot. My son was shaken. I was angry. But mostly, I was done being scared. I took the letter to the police. They logged it. That's all they ever seem to do, log things. I asked if they'd check Randall's house for handwriting matches. They said unless I had video or a witness, they couldn't. Fine. I went back to research mode. This time, I didn't just look at building permits. I dug into Randall himself. I found old property records in another state, Missouri. A house in St. Louis he used to own. I found public records showing it was foreclosed after a series of neighbor disputes and city code violations. A pattern. He'd done this before. I even tracked down the address and found it on Google Maps. Still boarded up. Then I got lucky. I found an old forum thread where people in that neighborhood had talked about a crazy neighbor who used to build random things and start fights. Someone mentioned the name Randall. I reached out, and guess what? They remembered him. They told me he had once installed speakers facing his neighbor's yard and blasted recordings of dogs barking. Every night. I had to sit down when I read that. The guy didn't just escalate, he thrived on it. Armed with this, I went to my lawyer again. She said if we could get a witness from that town to testify about his past behavior, it could help destroy his emotional distress claim, especially if we could show he had a pattern. It was a long shot, but I called one of the people from the forum. She picked up. She didn't hesitate. Oh yeah, she said, I'll testify. That guy's insane. While prepping for court, I decided to add a little insurance. I installed floodlights on every corner of my house, not pointed at his windows, just up and around my yard, bright enough to make my property look like a stadium. Then I set my sprinklers to go off at odd hours. Every time Randall came out at night, PFFFFFTTT. Soaked. Just a coincidence, of course. Then came the day before court. That night there was a fire. Not in my yard, in his backyard shed, the one under code enforcement, caught fire around midnight. I was asleep when I heard the sirens. Ran out in my slippers and saw smoke pouring out from behind his house. Fire department was already there. They contained it quick, but the whole back structure was gone. The next morning, I got a knock on my door. It was a fire investigator. He asked a few questions. I told him the truth. I was asleep, no clue what happened, hadn't seen a thing. He nodded, took notes. Then he asked if I'd had any conflicts with Mr. Randall. I looked him right in the eye. Yes, I said, but I didn't burn his damn shed down. Court was awkward. Randall showed up in a wrinkled suit, looking worse than ever. He tried to paint himself as a victim, emotional distress, noise complaints, even tried to mention the dog again. But my lawyer tore it all apart. We showed the timeline of harassment, the vandalism photos, and best of all, live testimony from his old neighbor in St. Louis via Zoom. She described everything, the noise games, the fake 911 calls, even the time he tried to sue someone over shadows crossing his lawn. The judge didn't throw the case out right away, but you could see in her face, it was over for him. That lawsuit was going nowhere. And yet, the shed fire stuck with me. I didn't start it, but someone had. And I had a bad feeling that Randall wasn't going to stop. Because if this guy could turn a simple boundary line into a campaign of madness, what would he do when everything he built, literally and legally, was falling apart? Something was coming. I could feel it. So after court, Randall was officially exposed. The judge didn't throw the case out immediately, but she ordered a full mental health review before the case could continue. That alone told me the court finally saw what I was dealing with. The city started enforcing the fines for his unpermitted structures. He had to tear them down. His credit took a hit. His insurance dropped him because of the fire. And through it all, he still didn't stop. Now, I don't mean petty stuff. No more spray paint or trash games. Randall went quiet again. Real quiet. And that was worse. I come home and feel like I was being watched. Lights on in his upstairs window. Curtains barely cracked. Just watching. Then one night, I got a call at 2:11 a.m. It was my son's number. I answered, groggy, heart pounding. But it wasn't my son. It was Randall. You took everything from me, he whispered. So I'm taking something from you. Then he hung up. I ran to my son's room. He was gone. Dog too. Panic took over. I called the cops. My hands were shaking. I told them everything. They responded fast, multiple cars. We found my son an hour later, 2 blocks away, sitting on the curb in his pajamas, confused but unharmed. He said the dog woke him up, barking at something in the backyard, and he thought he saw someone trying to open the window. So he ran. He thought maybe it was a raccoon. It wasn't. That same night, while cops were still at my house, one of them got a call on the radio. A neighbor 2 blocks over had called in something weird. A man walking down the alley, carrying what looked like a big duffel bag. Inside that bag, the headless body of a taxidermied deer. From my garage, Randall had broken in, stolen it, and was dragging it through the neighborhood like some kind of message. Police found him in the alley, mumbling to himself. He didn't resist. He didn't even speak when they cuffed him. Just kept staring at the bag. He was committed that night. Officially. Involuntary psychiatric hold. Later, I found out he'd been off his meds for months. Didn't even tell his doctor he stopped. The court threw out his lawsuit entirely after that. His house sat empty for weeks. Then the city condemned part of it. Mold, termites, water damage from the fire. Eventually, a for sale sign went up. But here's where the ending turns. Here's the part one don't like admitting. Even though I won, even though Randall's gone, I changed. I became someone I barely recognize now. I kept the cameras, kept the floodlights, still check the backyard 5 times a night. I can't sleep with the windows open anymore. And my son? He's fine. He says he's fine. But he doesn't like the dark now. And he always locks his door at night. Even the dog won't go near the side fence. The garage is gone. The shed is gone. Randall's gone. But he took something with him. Peace. Trust. Normal. And yeah, maybe I played it too cold at times. Maybe I smiled too much when his stuff got torn down. Maybe I took it a little too far. I don't regret defending my land. I don't regret using the law. But I do regret becoming someone who wanted revenge more than peace. If I'm being honest, I won. But it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving. And sometimes that's worse.